I'm sorry, there is one typo in the print in the program. This is basically printing. Okay, let's correct it before we move. Okay, so if I run it, I can see the output in the better readability. Okay, let's go to the PPT now. So we have understood the difference of two ways of creation of thread. We have understood the thread name, how to create the thread name. So each thread, when you create, either you give the thread name to that thread, otherwise uh, JVM provides um, some thread to that class, sorry, to that object. So suppose you are creating the thread and you're not giving any name, so it will provide some name on its own. So let's try to see that. Let's not give the name. Let's see what is value coming. Let's not give the name here. Okay, and let's see what name is coming here. So if you run this program, so it says that thread 1, thread 0, thread 1, thread 0. So it will keep the name on based on its own. Okay, so it is good to provide the name just to identify one thread from another thread. Okay, now there is something called now thread locale. Okay, so thread locale is basically uh, let's let's skip the thread locale. I will tell you thread locale later. So just for very small introduction about thread locale is used to when you want some variable to be part of each thread. Okay, so each thread will have one copy of any field or variable which is available in the class, and that is marked as a thread locale. It will not share with uh, thread local. It will not share the variable with other threads, so it will have its own copy. So that it will be very useful when we go for synchronization and all those things. So I will tell you later. So let's not go to very much detail about thread local. Okay. Let's try to understand few methods in class thread: sleep, yield, and join. These are, so far we have seen there is run method and we have used start methods. So uh, to execute the run method, there are two ways. One way is to call the start method on that object, which is object of that class, which is either implementing runnable or extending the thread. Okay, so either you use start method. Other ways you can directly call the run method, but directly calling the run method is not will not fulfill the actual thread programming. It will not the your thread will not create a new thread. It will the earlier existing thread will keep on running the run method, so it will not create the new thread. So you have to use thread dot start method. Okay, thread dot start method to use the run method in a new thread. Okay, so don't use run method directly. Okay, what I'm trying to say is, here if I go to Eclipse, I can simply call here run method. Okay, so this run method will not, if you try to run like this, it will not create a new thread. Okay, so the execution of detail of the run method will not be associated for a new thread. Okay, so it will be executing in the same thread context. So it is important to use start method. Generally, this kind of question can be asked in interview. Why not you use direct run methods? The reason behind not using method directly is, when you use run method directly, you are not creating the new thread. You're not taking the actual benefit of creation of new thread and executing the run method, right? So To avoid that, you have to use start method. So always use thread one dot start to start execution of the run method, not directly run method. Okay. So there are other methods which we can go through. Okay. So but these are the methods: sleep, yield, join, wait, notify. Wait, notify is are the methods which are not part of thread, which are even part of object. So any class that can use wait and notify. Okay. So if you want to go through API documentation, you can open this class called thread, where you can where you can read a lot about start method and run method, stop method. Okay. Right. Now let's go to PPT. So sleep method is a static method. Sleep method and yield method, those are static methods. Why they are static method? Because those apply on the current thread. Okay. So anything which any method which apply on the current thread, that method are the static method in Java. So sleep is a static method which is used to temporarily pause the current thread execution. So whatever thread is executing current thread, whatever current thread is executing, if I say thread dot sleep, that current thread will pause its execution for certain time, and that time can be specified. Okay. Need to use when we can use sleep method, we can use sleep method when you need to give a pause of current thread execution. Okay. I will tell you, I will give you one full example of sleep. Next is yield method. Yield method is very rarely used, and I would not recommend to use yield method unless it is very much required. So yield method is something called current thread is willing to give up the CPU for a while. Okay, suppose one thread is executing and it wants to give up the CPU for a while so that other thread can be executed. Okay, so JVM's thread scheduler select different thread of similar priority. Suppose there are five priority, and those threads are in a group. There is something called thread group where you can combine multiple threads into a group. Okay, you can create one thread group and associate uh, multiple threads into a group. So suppose out of those group, if I'm executing one thread and I say thread dot yield, so the current thread will just pause. Okay, it will give the CPU, it will give the execution for the other threads with the that will have the same priority. So it will just keep, it will not do anything for itself, it will give CPU and other resources for the other threads. Okay. So that is where yield method comes into picture. Generally not used. There are better ways to do the same job by other mean too. Okay. So there is method called join. Join is basically here what is happening. I am in case of yield, it is pausing itself and uh, giving the execution priority for the other threads which are having the similar priority. In case of join, it basically pause the current thread until specified thread is complete. Okay. And thread is, remember that thread is not a static method, so it is not applied on the current thread. You have to specify the join method on a specific thread. Okay. So when you apply a join method on a specific thread, then current thread will stop executing and it will wait till that the other thread where you have applied the join, that will complete. Okay. Suppose current thread is T1. Current thread is T1, and there is another thread is called T2, and you say that T2 dot join. So what will happen? T1, which is current thread, will wait till that time T2 is complete, or it can wait for certain time. Okay, then it will start executing. So you have provision to give parameter how many milliseconds it has to pause or wait. Okay, so that is the place where you will use a join. Okay, so if you use join, it makes sure that as soon as a thread calls join, the current thread, yes, currently running thread, will not execute unless the thread you have called join is finished. I hope it is clear. Okay, so why sleep and yield are static? As I said, those are uh, those are applied on the current thread. So that's reason those methods are static. Okay, wait and notify. Wait and notify. These two methods are not from thread, even they are from object class. Okay, so these two methods are used to communicate between two threads. Okay, so wait, what wait does? Wait tells the calling thread to give up the monitor and go to sleep until some other thread enters the same monitor and calls notify. Okay, so wait and notify, these are required when you are trying to communicate uh, one thread to another thread. Suppose there are two threads, one is printing odd number and one is printing even number. Suppose you want to print first odd number and let other thread print second even number, first thread then odd number, then second thread even number. If you want that kind of execution, you have to do the wait and notify concept, so that once one thread is done, it will notify other, till that time other thread will wait, and once other thread is done, they will notify first thread. Okay, and wait for the next notification. So like that wait and notify combination, they will do the execution in the alternate way. So wait tells calling thread to give up the monitor, so it will leave the monitor is kind of a piece of the execution of the program. Okay, so wait, wait tells the calling thread to give up the monitor and go to the sleep until some other thread enters the same monitor and calls notify. So notify wakes up the first thread and calls wait on the same object. Okay, so if one thread is notifying, it means that that thread itself is waiting, and if one thread is waiting, it means that it has already notified then waiting. Okay, so we will go through the example of thread sleep, thread wait and notify, thread yield, and thread join. Okay, let's go to Eclipse and understand these concepts.